Ladies and gentlemen, please do welcome David Clews of Unity News Network.
Alistair, good evening. How are you? Good evening to all your audience as well. Thank you so much for extending the opportunity to come on the show.
It's always a delight to have you on, David, and I was saying that at the start of the show. You know, you're very knowledgeable, and also you've got a way of communicating your knowledge in an entertaining manner as well. And you are a professional broadcaster, because Unity News Network is, well, how would you describe Unity News Network?
I actually say that we take an anarchic look at serious events. So, yeah, I mean, it is a very fine line, of course, because I by nature, I'm quite a comical person. I do like a joke and a laugh, but obviously we are dealing with very, very, very serious issues. So it's we I think you have to try and do things with a smile on your face, the way that the country is these days, Alistair. But we have a joke, we have a laugh, but we also do have a serious analysis. We look at geopolitics, we look at international politics, we look at local politics as well. And yeah, it's there's just so much going on just now. There's so much happening, but there's also so little happening as well. It's a very strange situation we kind of find ourselves in.
Yeah, yes, and there's it's also looking to the future as well and thinking, oh my goodness me, where is this going to go? And you know, if this isn't stopped, it's like the next year's general election. I mean, where on earth is that going to go as well? And it's not as if there's a choice between two completely different ways of looking at things. It's you know, bad and worse is the choice they can make. Maybe I'm wrong, I don't know, but that's sometimes how it feels.
It is. I mean, I was interested in what you were talking about, the way in which Labour and we'll call it the left. You're right. They know how to wield power. The right doesn't. The right comes in and then just buckles on everything. And you saw that with Trump, the Trump presidency, where he basically did nothing for 4 years. I mean, yes, he did some stuff, but he was elected on a manifesto pledge to build a wall. He didn't build a wall. You look at the state now of the Mexican border with the USA. He said he was going to drain the swamp. He didn't drain the swamp. The swamp consumed him. And it's constant knee-taking, basically, from those. And what the left have done, they have successfully portrayed themselves as the good guys, and anyone that's against them is a bad person. So, and people think that, people who are small c socially conservative, or people who are traditionalists, that you can see it. They're terrified, and they've managed to persuade people that Suella Braverman and Rishi Sunak are heading up like a neo-fascist regime, and that, like, it's insane. And like they say that we've never had such an extremist Home Secretary, and they're like, no, they're not. This is the most open borders, weak Conservative government we've ever had.
That's right. Almost 1 million people are going to be coming in, or don't know if they've come in the last 12 months, or if this 12-month period is scheduled to take in 1 million. But that's just utterly beyond belief. It is actually easily believable. If you live in cities, you believe it.
What you have to remember is that is 1 million net. So probably about 1.5 million people, maybe more, have come from a foreign country, and 500,000 Brits have left. And looking at it, I mean, obviously there's many angles you can look at, but fundamentally, if you have a country that is run by people from other countries who have a different religion, a different background, different cultures, then that's a foreign country. It's not overly controversial to say. And if you have your ruling elite, because I mean, obviously there's a country grounded in Christian values, and if you have people who are non-Christian or non-native to Europe or this country, the fundamental shape of the country is going to change. And people say, well, that's not true. Well, look at Scotland. Scotland underwent a massive demographic shift in the early 20th century when you had 900,000 Irish migrants. And that fundamentally altered the shape of Scotland. Scotland went from being a massive unionist country, a staunch small c conservative country, to not being one. And that was due to demographic shifts. So people can pretend it doesn't exist and pretend it's not happening, but it is happening, and it is altering the face and shape of this country.
Yeah. The idea used to be that, well, it's okay if different people from different backgrounds and creeds and cultures and so on come in, so long as they assimilate to the overwhelming cultural attitude of the nation. And I understand that, and I think that it can work, but it requires two things to be in place. One is that the numbers coming in have to be relatively low.
Yep.
But above all, the actual culture of the nation has to be very confident and very strong.
Correct.
And this is our way of doing things. And Britain has collapsed as far as that's concerned.
Yeah, it has.
I mean, whether you're Tory or Labour leaders, they couldn't define for you what is British culture and heritage at all. And to the extent they can think about it, they would want to kind of distance themselves from it, or claim that, oh, that's, you know, something we don't want to talk about anymore because it was racist or something like that.
And what's really incredible though is the way in which the left have totally buckled on immigration, because being against mass migration was traditionally a left-wing perspective, because having a constant source of cheap labour disproportionately benefits the ruling capitalist classes. And they don't have... I mean, I played a speech the other day of Mick Lynch, and he's saying that as soon as people arrive, they should get the same rights of workers as others. I mean, again, Keir Hardie famously protested against Lithuanian miners being brought over to work. And I was down in London, and London's just a pyramid scheme that's totally reliant on a constant flow of migrants to work low-paid jobs. And there's going to come a point where these people are going to say, look, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not working 40 hours a week, living in a tiny flat somewhere. For what? And what happens then? Because that is what happens when you have mass migrants. That's exactly what happened to the Roman Empire. Was they opened up the borders. Anyone could become a Roman citizen, and you had people from far-flung corners of the empire, used to be enemies, and they turned around and said, well, we don't care about Rome. We're not going to fight for Rome. And it doesn't work. Like, that's my argument. This doesn't work for anybody. It really, really doesn't. And the housing situation, again, it's all primarily centred on the southeast of England. It's a crazy system. And I don't know how much longer they'll just be able to keep a lid on things. And the other thing that nobody ever talks about is so many other conflicts from abroad are imported here. You've got Hindu-Muslim tensions. You've got Jewish-Muslim tensions. You've got pro-Iranian regime protesters out fighting with anti-Iranian regime protesters. Like, I fear very much for the future, and especially in the cities. And I don't think any politician has the guts to talk about it. They do just immediately smear you as a racist, smear you as a xenophobe. And but I think that will change eventually. I think sensible people will have to come up with a way to solve this and have an argument, because it's not working. And the only reason that it's okay is because the economy's still not too bad.
Yeah. And I think that something has to change. I can't see how this can keep going on, and I can't for the life of me. Well, I was talking about this with somebody else the other day, and this person was saying to me, look, it's actually our politicians who are encouraging this. Because I was saying, look, can we not have sanctions against France? Like, say to France, look, you control that beach line, or literally, we're not going to buy from you. And what that would mean is like France would return the favour and they say, okay, well, we're not going to buy from you. And that's like escalating it to an international situation. But this is a national emergency.
Yeah,
One of the things that's been wrong about this debate from the very beginning is that it's been framed within the concept of a human rights issue.
Correct.
The idea that, these people are escaping their homeland and they need to be protected because they're vulnerable people. They don't look vulnerable to me, but let's even go along with that. Okay, so it's a human rights issue. If you frame it in that, you're never going to be able to stop it, because you're always going to say, because there's always going to be asylum seeking till the end of time. Because till the end of time, mankind is always going to be fighting with each other. There's always going to be wars. There's always going to be problems. There's always going to be environmental disasters. There's always going to be asylum until the end of time. So if you allow asylum, you're basically saying you don't have a border.
Correct.
So, but that's if you frame it within a human rights concept. What it actually is a national security matter. It's a national security matter. And when you change the frame that way, then the options available to you to handle it become completely different. You have a whole new toolbox to address this national security emergency. So we have a national security emergency going on.
But the Tories fundamentally don't want to do anything about it, because Jeremy Hunt was talking to this today. Well, we need to make it easier for people to migrate. This is just, it's so off the charts from the reality of life for everyday people, and it is just kicking the can down the road. It is just not solving the key problem. And one of your viewers made a great point, and I talk about this frequently. I've coined the phrase the Lebanonization of Britain. And you look at Lebanon. Lebanon was a very peaceful, stable, pro-European country. Now Lebanon is a complete basket case. Inflation, hyperinflation. You have to have I can't remember the exact, I think you have to have a Maronite Christian president. You then have to have a Sunni prime minister, and then a Shia, I can't remember exactly, is it a Shia chancellor? And then you've got Druze Arabs as well, and they just basically all fall out, and it just creates chaos. And Lebanon is a good example of what could happen here eventually, because of the short-termist and the fearful politics that we've had over the last few years, and it's terrible.
Yeah, we don't have any men or women in power with the necessity, with the mental attitude that is required to deal with this national emergency. Whatever you may think of some of the old boys like Winston Churchill and so on, I'm sure they would have had an attitude of how to deal with this, and they wouldn't have been faffing about talking about compassion and the need to roll over and just accept the absolute transformation of your country. We've got people who, to be fair to them, Suella Braverman and that, they talk the talk, but again, they're facing the blob, which is the civil service, which is another thing that's wrong with the British political system, is the civil service has to be utterly transformed, because if you have a civil service that does not want to do what the government of the day wants to do, then the government cannot get anything done. Well, Keir Starmer will get everything just railroaded right through,
because he's their man. And you look at Dominic Raab. I don't like Dominic Raab at all. However, the reasons he was made to resign were nonsense, and they were trying to make out he was a bully. He was trying to. That's just not true. And again, this is what they will do. They look at the Sue Gray thing. Like, she did that report on these parties, which was nonsense, and she's being tapped up to be the next lead chief exec of the Labour Party, and the Guardian and the Blob are like, well, yeah, what's wrong with that? But I think, though, what's interesting is Starmer is not popular. He just isn't. People don't like him, and I'm pleased about that. However, Sunak is equally unpopular and useless. But I think people do see through Starmer. I think the left of the Labour Party see Starmer for what he is. I think they see him for a sellout and a charlatan who will betray all the principles that he did what supposedly have. So I think there probably will be a Labour government, but it might actually be a minority government. And we were talking earlier, Alistair, about this national conservatism conference, and like you look at some of the sound bites coming from it, and it does look quite good. And but it's the same people who have been in charge for the last 13 years now telling you the solution to the problems that they've created. Well, and increasingly politics is just a pantomime. And what is a pantomime? You've got a good guy and you've got a bad guy. But at the end, they all hold hands and walk up and bow in front of the audience because they're actually friends, really. And the baddie's not really a bad guy. And that's what this is. It is a pantomime. And when I talk about, and you're right what you say about the civil servants, we do need a revolution in this country. We need change. And unfortunately, I think the problem with people on our side is they still have that traditional conservative mindset that, well, if we can just shuffle the pieces. No, I think we have to be radical because the left are utterly radical. And there's a lot I don't like about Thatcher and what she did, but she was radical and she did what she said she would, and so did Blair. And Blair and Thatcher really have been the two most pivotal prime ministers, I think, in the post-war period. And ever since then, we've just had a managerial class of politician, and that is embodied in Starmer. So I don't know what will happen. I mean, I think there's a real chance the Tories might fall apart as a party. I think there's a chance the Labour Party might fall apart as well, which will be good because the two-party system's a joke. And I increasingly see a fracturing. You might have the left of the Labour Party goes it alone, maybe, and then you've got the chance that an Islamic party will emerge as well. I think that's probably in the horizon in the next few years, and things will change very, very quickly, I think.
Yes, I feel that it cannot go on the way that it's going on at the moment. I just have this premonition that something's going to break, as it were. If the premonition, is that the right word? I don't know, but I just feel like my head, this can't go on because just everything seems to be getting worse. You walk down the street, it's a sunny day, and the shops are full, and you think it's not, but like underneath the streets, on the streets, underneath, you just feel there's something not going right here. David, before you answer, I'm just going to flash out a question to the viewers for our little badge here, and
very nice.
You can get that if you answer this question. Send your answer to contact@aforceforgood.uk. On this day in 1977, the Queen started her Silver Jubilee tour in which great British city? Send your answer to contact@aforceforgood.uk. But yes, and also, David, the voices that are marginalised and that are not allowed onto the television as well tells you where the power is. And I like GB News, but GB News will have any far left fruitcake on.
They wouldn't have me on or you on.
Spouting nonsense. And this person's attitude gets broadcast throughout the world and gets thousands and thousands of views. But they will not have people like you and I on because we're too truthful and we're too right.
I mean, that's the thing as well. I am quite bombastic and hyperbolic in what I do, but I can actually also sit and have a reasonable conversation about things. Whereas, as you say, they do put, and I think a lot of that is rage bait. That it is just to wind people up and really get them going. I think that is a very successful business model that the right I've realised. Like I try and not do that now because it doesn't achieve anything. Like posting. I mean, we still do it, but it's like when, I mean, dare I say, posting a child twerking or something like that. Unfortunately, that does happen, but it is designed to provoke outrage. But it's how do we then manifest that outrage into something happening? Because we've got no power, we've got no influence, and it is a poor situation to be in. And I think the problem is people with our persuasion, our point of view, they just don't go into politics, whereas people that have gone into politics have all been campaigners, people that work for charities, people that work for third sector organisations, and that's why you're left with the basket case that is Scotland. But look at, on a positive note, look at what's happened to Sturgeon in the SNP and how quickly that has happened. You know, from basically an unassailable position 6 months ago, which she was in, formidable player, right up there, still at the top of her game, gone. And the cops out her door. And I've got maybe a slightly different opinion. I personally think the police have made a bit of a balls up of this. I think they're doing another Rangers here. That I don't know. I think there's definitely been a lot of unethical behaviour by the SNP. I think they've probably broken electoral law, but have they done anything that's criminal? I mean, obviously we would say it's criminal, but based on the law that they have, is it criminal? I'm not so sure, but I think the police only did this because they knew, they sensed the power was shifting from the power that Sturgeon had, and it just shows you how quickly that can happen. And Hamza Yousaf's just there, and he's useless, and he's just being humiliated on a daily basis. But then what's the alternative? Anas Sarwar, you know, part of that same Pollock Shields clique, part of the same friend circle as the problem at the moment is people are just switching off. They're not engaging, and you see that as people are just getting on with their lives. They just think, oh, I can't be bothered. I'm going to go and have a nice day out and go for a meal somewhere. That's it.
Yes. That's a good point. I think that's correct. I do. Did you see any of the national? For those viewers who don't know, there's been a conference held down in London. I think it's a 3 or 4 day conference. It started on Monday, and it's calling itself National Conservatives, or the National Conservative Conference or something. Anyway, the two words national and conservative, they put that together, which is unusual these days to see the word national being put forward in a right of centre context.
But what's interesting about it is it's a global event. It's being done in cities and countries around the world. So really? It's it is actually. So let me actually just I was doing a bit of research into it earlier, and there will be conferences in London, Miami, Brussels, Orlando, Rome, and Washington. So how organic and how grassroots it is, I think, is open to debate. Well, the way I look at it is, I think the elites, the power brokers, they know that there's anger. They know that these subjects need talked about. But it is the system trying to provide the solution. And the system and those who are part of the system cannot provide that solution. It is only people who are detached, who are not involved, who don't have the selfish naked interest that a lot of these people have. And I mean, I know people might like GB News, but I see GB News as a bit of a safety valve, in that people just at least someone's standing up for me, but nothing's really happening, and that has been in history. Like, what was it Lenin said? He says, well, yes, we'll have an opposition and we'll be the ones that lead it. You know, and that's I think unless people just really have a ruthlessness and clear insight about what needs to happen, and we need fresh blood, you need different voices, and even non-ideological voices. Why does this have to be a new ideology, national conservatism? You know, what does that even mean? Can we not just get back to principles and pragmatism and debate and dialogue, rather than everything having to be based around rigid ideological dogma? Yeah. No, that's very good. What you're saying is absolutely 100% bang on, and we'll see where this conference, this idea of this national conservatism thing goes, if it goes anywhere, or if it's really just going to be a few books that get put on a shelf and forgotten about, or whether it sparks other people to start to think differently about these sorts of matters. I do think it's interesting that
this conference is trying to mainstream the concept of the nation being a good thing.
Anything
that's
that
at least
opens
a start.
the Overton window is not a bad... Like, I say that as well about GB News, etc. At least they're furthering the Overton window, like, and putting things out for public conversation. So from that perspective, I'm not against it. I just my experience is that there's a lot of talking and nothing gets done, and all the while the powers that be, just the control grid just keeps growing, and they're the ones that are ruthlessly working behind the scenes to make these changes.
Yeah,
and we're not.
Oh, you're 100% right on that. And just as we wind...
So, Alistair, just very quickly, in relation to Scotland, for example, I remember when they changed the name from the Scottish Executive to the Scottish Government, and they put a big saltire in the middle of it. I remember that, 2007, 2008, and I said to Annabel Goldie at the time, I said, look, why are you supporting this? Because the Tories voted for the SNP budget at the time. I said, you're basically making people's mindset is becoming a quasi-independent country, and they were just like, oh, well, we need to get the budget through, because if we don't get the budget through, then blah, blah, blah. They don't understand the optics of it. And you know that, Alistair, so much of that came from the Scottish Government, the First Minister, the Health Secretary. They then had a cabinet.
Yes. Yes. Well, as I quoted, before you came on, I quoted Alex Salmond on this very matter, and the importance of politicians who understand symbolism in order to command the present and control the future, I think is how he put it.
Yeah, but at least as long as the budget got through, Alistair, that's all. That's the Tory one. I was listening to that as well. Like, I mean, as long as the GDP keeps growing by 0.1%, then we'll be fine. We'll destroy the entire country, but at least we had economic growth for the last 3 years.
Yes. Well, listen, David, people need to support alternative voices, because that's something that everybody can do. And you're at unitynewsnetwork.co.uk. That's your website, and you've also got your your regular programs, which are on dlive.tv/Unity News, and these are really, really good. And your Twitter is Unity News Net, as is your Facebook is Unity News Network.
And Telegram as well. If people go to the website and they go, and there's all the social media links, go there and please just follow us there and listen to what we have to say, and follow us on all the social media channels, and you will get a genuine analysis of what is happening in geopolitics, and
absolutely,
and non-emotional. I mean, obviously there's always emotion, but so much of the modern media is to provoke an emotional response in people. It's very disingenuous. I mean, they did it over COVID, and they've done it over Ukraine. They didn't used to do this, but they realised that if they pump emotion into people, they pump that in, people will really then get behind the official regime position. So sometimes you do have to take a cold, dispassionate look at things as well, which we try and do.
Absolutely, and people will learn more from your programmes. Some of them they might be a little bit shocked by, but they need to be in that sense, because you won't hear it from the national mainstream media.
I often say as well, what we're doing at UNN is we are waterboarding the public. We're putting them over a bench and a towel over their face and pouring water. We're waterboarding them with the truth, Alistair, in a metaphorical sense.
Yes, well, goodness knows some people do need that that wake-up call. David, it's been fantastic speaking to you,
Alistair,
as always. Wish
pleasure.
we could have you on every night, but you're on
my pleasure.
Your own show every night, which is...
It's my pleasure. It's always a pleasure talking to you, Alistair. Good man.
Okay, we'll speak again. Take care.
Bye, Alistair. Bye-bye.
Good night.